Hey guys, it's EJ with Blockpad, and in this video, we're going to take a look at the changes in Blockpad version 1.8. We're really excited about this release. It's got a lot of great new features, and there's a lot of ground to cover, so I'm just going to hop into it. So the first thing to look at are the table of contents improvements. So the first one is that now page numbers will work across the entire file. So this is just the documents frame. You can see the pages end at 2, but the table of contents is looking at this entire document. So it's looking at the spreadsheets frame, export, and so on, and it's showing the page numbers for all of those, where before that wasn't available. There are also some new options when inserting the table of contents. So if I come up here to write table of contents, then you'll see the new options. I can choose whole file or just the frame that I'm in. You can place it at the caret or at the top level. And you can also choose to include frame titles or not. So I'm going to leave that as yes and click OK. And when I have frame titles set to yes, you'll see that the actual names of the frames, so what you see over here, is going to show up in the table of contents in between those things. And you can compare that to what I have in this table of contents here, where that is set to no. I'm going to come here and delete this. Moving on, the table of contents will now recognize headings in multi-line cells. So that's going to be word processor style tables. It will now recognize headings in that. And also in spreadsheets, if you set a cell to multi-line and then set the text in it to heading, that's going to be recognized in the table of contents. We also have some new page number options. So the big one here are that page numbers will now work through multiple frames. You might have noticed that for my table of contents that my document here ends at page 2, and then on my sheet page example here, if I change view to collapse margins be off, you'll see that's continued there at 3, and then all of that's continued all the way through. So to set that, you're going to go up here to write and page numbers, and now I'm controlling the page numbers for this particular frame, so for the solver sections frame. And you'll see I have this checked here, try to continue from previous frame. If I uncheck that and click OK, you'll see that now I'm starting at page 1 at the start of the frame, and this is going to be the default. So if you want page numbers to continue throughout the entire document, go to Write, Page Numbers, and then check this box here, try to continue from previous frame, and then also check this box here to apply this to all of the frames in the file, and then click OK. And then now those page numbers are going to continue through each frame. And one note on spreadsheets, those page numbers are only going to continue up to where there's content. So you see this goes up to page 5, and then it does not continue, and spreadsheets over here, I'll turn off collapse margins, is going to continue with page 6. So next, for page number options, we also now have new options for horizontal page numbers. So back over to the sheet page example, you can see all of the horizontal pages are going to be the same. You can now change that, so I'll go to Write, Page Numbers. We now have options for down, then over, or over then down, and also this additional number option. So I'll click OK. This is over then down, so it'll go 3 to 4, 5, 6, and note again, the page numbers are only going to apply to where there's content. So I'll go back to Write, Page Numbers. To show you guys what additional number we'll look at, I'll choose this 1A, 1B option. And so I'm going to have 3A, 3B, and so on. And this will be 4A and 4B. And that's what that's going to look like. To reset that, I'll just come over here, give pages horizontally the same number, and click OK. Moving on, we have two small but I think very useful spreadsheet features. I'm going to go back to collapse margins to the regular view. The first is that cut-paste reference tracking is now updated to work more like conventional spreadsheets. So for example, I have these cells here that are referencing 11 and these numbers right here. And if I select them and Control X to cut and then paste them somewhere, those references are going to track, and this reference is going to track as well. So now I can cut, paste cells all around the document, just like you would in a conventional spreadsheet, and all that's going to work very smoothly. I can also select them all and move them about. So that's working now a little bit more like you'd probably expect. We also added a wrap text property for value cells. So this is just a regular value cell. I can reference it in formulas, unlike a multi-line cell where you can only reference what it is inside. And now if I go to properties, I can change this wrap text property to yes, and that text is going to wrap just like that. Moving on, we have some new exporting options. So the first is that you can copy paste Blockpad equations into Word as Word style equations. So first you're going to have to change a setting to do that. You go up here to the Blockpad logo, click it, and click Settings. And then down here for options, you're going to make sure Copy Equations in Word equation format is checked. And then when you've got that checked, if you highlight Blockpad content, I'm going to press Control C to copy, and then go over to a Word document. If I paste that in, those Blockpad equations are going to paste as Word style equations with the result. I'm pretty sure also, for example, if I change show steps here to reference values and I copy this in, so I'll copy, well, I just need this one. I'll copy and delete this. Oops. And now paste this in, then now that's going to have the show steps in there as well. So it's going to copy it over as you see it in Blockpad. Obviously, the layout's going to look a little bit different because it's not in Blockpad, it's in Microsoft Word, but it's going to get all the crucial math layout in there for you. So just to show you what this more complex formula is going to look like, it's going to look like that all inside of Microsoft Word equations. We also have some PDF export improvements. So the first two hyperlinks are going to work, including the hyperlinks in the table of contents. And also Blockpad can now export a PDF navigation outline based on the headings. So to show you guys what that'll look like, I'll come to File, Save to PDF. I'm going to select all of the frames in the file, have all my options selected, and click OK. I'm going to save that to my desktop, overwrite the last one. Now when that opens up, you can see I have my table of contents. If I control click on this, no, I don't need to control click. If I just click on these, it's going to take me to that part of the file. Also, if I come up here, I will have my PDF table of contents that's exported as the navigation, and I can click inside of these, and that's going to bring me to that part of the file. I'm going to go back to Blockpad. Let's see. So now back in Blockpad, one more PDF export option that we have, or you can now export with accessibility tags, and that's going to export things like image alt text, provided that you have the alt text property set on the image. And also the Blockpad equations are going to be tagged with the formula defining them. So for example, this equation in the PDF, it's going to have a tag that has this formula text associated with it, and that's available there for screen readers to read. Moving on, we have some changes to solver sections. One big, very useful change is that there's improved solution convergence. So what that means is for nonlinear equations where Blockpad is doing numerical solving to get the results, it's now going to work with a wider range of initial guesses and different linear setups. It's going to be able to converge onto a solution more frequently. So that's pretty big. You don't have to worry about getting the initial guess kind of exactly right in some of those situations. The second big thing is that duplicate unknown variables will now give an error. So to show you guys what that error is going to look like, I have the solver section here with just a equals 10, and then the second one with a plus b equals 30. So with human eyes looking at this, it's pretty obvious that you can first solve a and then use that a in the second one to solve for b. Blockpad's giving an error here, though, because the unknown variable a is being used in both of those solver sections. The behavior before would have been that sometimes an error would be given and sometimes it would give a solution, and it was just kind of based on how that dependency system was working. But we changed it so that it always gives an error for the purpose of consistency. That being said, there's 4 different options for handling this. All of them are pretty straightforward, so I'm going to go ahead and cover those now. First is that you can manually set the solver variables. So to do that, you'll select the solver section, come over here to the solver variables property, and by default, determine variables automatically is what's selected, and that was previously all that was available in Blockpad. Now you can choose specific lists of variables, and here I'm going to type in a sub 1 and click add and click OK. And now that I've done that, Blockpad knows that this solver section is supposed to be solving for a sub 1, so it lets it do that, and then this solver section can use that information to solve for b1. Moving on, the next option is to just put the equations in one solver. Now I know for different reasons, whether page layout or whatever, this isn't always an option, but I just wanted to point out that that will often solve the issue because now it's not 2 separate solver sections looking at the same unknown variable. It's just one. So I'll go ahead and delete this. The next option is to capture values on the first solver. Now, if you're not familiar with capture values, it's basically like closing a box in Blockpad so that now you always need to use the name of the box to access that value. I'll put a link in the description to describe it some more. But to show you what it looks like in this scenario, I'll click Solver 7, and then I will change capture values to yes. And now in this solver 8 one, I'm going to type in solver 7 dot and press enter. And now that's going to work because this solver section recognizes that A3 is not an unknown value. It's going to be this. And so it's able to solve first for A3 and then solve for B3. And then finally, the last option is to use an intermediary value. So what that's going to look like is I'll press equals for an equation, and I'll type a sub 4 sub SOL for solution, and equals, click A4 there. So now I have this value named A4 solution, and if I come over here in the solver section and reference that value, instead of trying to solve for A4, then that's going to work. And note that you don't have to type in sub solution after there. That could be named anything, or it could even just be a equation that uses it. So I might say C sub 4 equals A sub 4 times 5. And then just to solve for something totally differently, I might say C sub 4 here. And now that's going to solve for that. And then obviously if I divide by 5 here, then I'm going to get the same solution as before with the other ones. So those are the different options for handling that duplicate unknown variable in solvers. I know for a lot of you guys, you may have never seen this scenario, but for the people that are doing it, that's going to be how you handle it going forward. Last, I want to cover a number of smaller changes. First, we've got hyperlinks. So inserting hyperlinks is going to be improved. One big improvement is pasting from browsers. So specifically pasting from Microsoft Edge. If I come up here and copy this URL and then go back to Blockpad and I paste that in, that's going to paste that as a hyperlink with the page title. So if I control click this, it's going to bring me there. Also, if I copy this and then go back to Blockpad, if I insert a hyperlink, which I can do up here, or for me, I'll press Control K, start typing in hyperlink, and press enter. Now I have the address and the text fields for entering here, where before it was just the address. So I'll paste that in, and I can also write in the text here, say release notes for 1.8, and click OK. So that is that. You can now also edit inside of a hyperlink. So if I click this and click Edit Hyperlink, then that's going to bring me address and text, but I can also edit inside Hyperlink, and now I can make changes directly inside of it like that. Then to exit this Edit Inside Hyperlink mode, I'm just going to click outside of it, and it's going to go back to working like a hyperlink. Now this can be really useful because now you can have more rich text features inside of that hyperlink, including images. So to show you that, I have this image right here. I'm going to click it, press Control C to copy, then edit inside hyperlink, and now I can paste it in. And now the image, I'm going to click outside, is part of the hyperlink, and I can Control click, and it's going to bring me to that page. Now to clean things up, I can edit inside hyperlink and delete the text on either side. Let me do that again. Edit inside hyperlink. And now that I've got that, I'll click outside, and just this image is going to work as the hyperlink. So I'll press Control click, and it's going to bring me to that page. Next, we have some new functions in units. The first is the sequence function, and this is going to work a little bit like a alternative to linear series. So if you just give it one value, it's going to give you a single dimensional array with that many rows from 1 and then stepping up 1 for each time. You can also pass in the number of columns, a start value, and a step value. And then that's going to go up that step value left to right, top to bottom. So you can use this pretty directly as an alternative to linear series by doing something like in the example I have here. So I have the value in, I have the value distance, and I'm going to have n number of rows, one column, starting at 0 feet, and then distance divided by n minus 1. And that's going to give me something comparable to a linear series. In terms of which one's better, it's more a matter of preference, but that is now available as well. We also have the SignificantFigureDigits function, and that's going to return the number of digits places where a given value will have the specified number of significant figures. So here I have significant figures set to 3. If, for example, I wanted 5, then that's going to change to the tens place. And as I get closer to the decimal, that's going to be less and less. And if I start getting more and more the other way, then it's going to go the opposite direction. So this is pretty useful in one very specific scenario where you want to round down based on a given number of significant figures. So in that scenario, you can create a custom function that looks like this, round down sig figs, given a value and the number of sig figs. You would use the round down function, the value, and then use this new function, SignificantFigureDigits, of the value and the sig figs you want. And then that's going to work for that. Next, we have a new unit called station feet. It's going to work basically the same as regular feet, except that it's displayed differently in the result. So you can see I have here 1,123 feet to station feet, and it's going to have that plus sign there in the middle. Similarly, 1 mile converted to station feet is going to look like that. And we also have a new unit called metric chainage that's going to put that plus sign in the thousands place instead of the hundreds. Some more miscellaneous small things. There's a better insertion tool for charts. So for example, if I insert chart, I now have the placement option to do it at the caret, which is just going to be right there. I'll press cancel. There's a new math layout for NthRoot. So where before this function would have just been displayed in the math layout, now it's going to show with the radical sign and the root shown up there. We also modified image pre-selection highlighting. So if you select an image, it's still going to be highlighted, but when you're hovering over an image for pre-selection, it's just going to highlight the border like you see there. Similarly, it's going to do that with drawings, and that's going to be useful now for if you're trying to draw on top of an image, then it's not going to go back and forth between highlighting the whole image and highlighting your specific object. It's just going to highlight that border. Also, we now have the IBM Plex fonts built in. If you can tell, I've been using the IBM Plex Sans font for this preview file. We really like these series of fonts and we think it works well in the context of Blockpad, so we've got those built in. It's not just Plex Sans, it's also Math, Mono, and Serif. And you can also now set the default font for a file. So if I go back over to settings, which if you remember I opened by clicking this, going to settings, I can go to defaults and change the default document font. So for example, if I change this to Arial, anytime I make a new file, then that font is going to be in Arial. One last thing is that we now have the apostrophe option as a grouping symbol. So before we just had commas, underscores, and spaces, but now we also have this apostrophe symbol. You can get to it by going to Value Format and checking Show Grouping Symbol, and you can see all the options there, and apostrophe is the new one. You also have a number of bug fixes in this update. If you want to see a full list of those and a full list of all of the features, then you can go to the release notes page, which I'll put a link to in the description. That's going to have all of the notes for this version 1.8 release. You'll also see all of the notes for previous releases going back to 2018. So I'll put a link to this in the description. But to show you guys, you can also get to it from our home page by going to support and going to release notes here, and that's where it's going to be. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thank you.